Hi, my name's Richard Rouse. I'm the director, designer, and writer on The Church in the Darkness.
Richard, what is The Church in the Darkness?
So The Church in the Darkness is a infiltration game inside a religious cult in the 1970s. So your nephew has gone down to South America with this group and joined them, and you don't know if he's okay or not. So you're trying to get into the group and try to find him, see if he's okay. The trick is you don't really know if the group is actually fully apocalyptic and dangerous, something bad's going to happen, or if they're just a bunch of crazy hippies in the woods. You're trying to figure that out. And because the game is replayable, we actually change that up every time. So sometimes they're more dangerous, sometimes they're not, and you're trying to figure it out.
Talk about the gameplay in this game. It's an isometric view and kind of this open world kind of environment.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big open map in this sort of compound in the jungle. And because we're top down, it plays very differently than other stealth games. You have this great sort of awareness of your surroundings that you get that way, and you can try to avoid guys. You can actually play the game quite quickly, so it's not necessarily slow stealth unless you want to play it that way. And you can just move from group to group trying to avoid conflict, or get into conflict if you want. We sort of leave it up to you.
What were some of the inspirations behind these games' mechanics?
Mechanics-wise, I really loved the very original Castle Wolfenstein. Now, this is going way back. Not the shooter, not the one from the 90s, but in 1982, I believe, on the Apple II and Commodore 64, it's this game called Castle Wolfenstein where you're infiltrating a Nazi castle, and it's from top down, and it's obviously the graphics of the time and stuff. But I just love that game and haven't seen that a lot. A lot of people, when they see it, think of Metal Gear, like the Metal Gear before it was solid. It was top down, and it was 2D at the time. Now we're 3D, but it's those sort of mechanics where it just really feels different to play infiltration experience that way.
As technology evolves, with NVIDIA with its RTX cards and with Unreal Engine, Unity and stuff like that, what does it open up for you creatively as a game developer?
Yeah, well, obviously here, instead of having to make it 2D, that was all the rage with indie games, or way back in the Castle Wolfenstein days. Here, the game is fully 3D, and we're able to simulate a whole community, right? So you're not just moving room to room or something like that. It's a whole living, breathing sort of town. It's got real-time day-night. It's the longer you're in there, things get darker and darker, and it's just cool to be able to build this world that feels more alive because it's really 3D instead of having to do 2D because we're showing so much of the world at one time.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges for developers when they're making. Your game is not essentially open world, but in an open world game is making everything feel like it's living and breathing. So what went into the AI and you said the day and night cycle, what went into all that to make sure that the people acted accordingly and it felt like it was a living, breathing world?
Yeah, it's a trick to, the game is actually open world. I describe it that way. It's not open world like GTA, but you can go anywhere, multiple paths and that sort of stuff. It's not you just being funneled down a chute. But for us, it's, a lot of it is authored still. So there's obviously the AI of the characters that will react to what you're doing, but there's also just thinking, well, what are activities that people could do in here? And then getting those animated and setting up different scenarios around the camp. So you're seeing these people who are sort of just living their lives normally, right? And you're going in to try to find your nephew, and you're sort of the intruder. So everybody freaks out if they see you, that sort of thing. But just figuring out, a group that's just devout. We've got a lot of people praying around the camp. We've got, some things that are even more intense than that going on in different places. So just populating the world and figuring out activities and then, getting those to integrate with the AI.
Yeah, the team at Ubisoft for Far Cry 5 did something similar in terms of theme. Did you guys do any research into cults or the cult and see how would these people act or how do these people think?
Yeah, absolutely. I love research. It's my favorite part of a game project because it's just you're learning this stuff and you're trying to think, how could I apply this to a game? So we really looked at the 1970s specifically because I feel like cult groups, that was sort of the peak because people were disillusioned from the 1960s and they thought the world was going to end from nuclear annihilation at any time. Now we don't have that same terror that they did back then in a way. So people would go try, obviously society is failing, so we should go join this group or get ready for the end times or whatever it is. So you had a whole lot of different groups in the 70s that were doing that. And this was before, and then, it ended in some tragedies, notably like the Jonestown one, that made people more skeptical about these groups. But in the 70s, before that, they were really optimistic and just said, let's try a new way. So we view them as cults, but they were really sort of people just trying to do something different with their lives.
Talk about the period setting, because we see a lot of settings in modern setting or in like a fantasy past setting, but we don't really see too many games take place in 1960s, 70s.
Right, yeah, that was important, again, because of the research. I knew that was, when there were a lot of these groups. And just trying to, for this game, it's sort of like an immersive sim type game, like a Dishonored or like a Bioshock or something, but without the fantasy, without the sci-fi. And I just wanted to try to take some of those mechanics where the world feels like you can poke it and react with it in different ways, but just make it all real, so there's no like demon that jumps out at the end and turns out to be behind it.
When did your game come out and what platforms will it be on?
Yeah, so we've announced for PS4, Xbox, and PC so far, and we're coming out later this year.
Biggest question I have to ask every developer is, what about Nintendo Switch?
I'm a big fan of the Nintendo Switch. My kids love it. I love playing it too. We like that platform a lot, and we definitely want to, it seems like something we'd be interested in. If we had anything to announce, we would definitely tell you.
Let's announce it on the main consoles first, and then and support the game, and maybe it'll make its way faster.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we love the PS4 and Xbox. That's my background as a developer, and then more hardcore stuff. The Switch is just cool though. So yeah, definitely a nice piece of hardware.